With more now, we are joined by Graeme Clark, who, for 5.5 years, ending in 2024, served as Canada's ambassador to Mexico. Graeme Clark, thank you for joining us.
Michael, it's a pleasure.
Now, you have said, and I was reading an article earlier today in which you said that, and I'm paraphrasing here, that Canada has overlooked its relationship with Mexico, and that has actually been to Canada's detriment. What do you mean by that?
I think that there's a blind spot about Mexico in Canadian government circles. I think it's this is a partner, a significant, important partner for us on the trade and on the investment front, and as a partner in North America that we basically don't take terribly seriously, or that we don't really understand, or that we have cliched ideas about. Most Canadians think of Mexico as a sort of a beach destination, tequila and fiesta and mariachis, and that's all well and good. And yes, that's part of the reality of Mexico and part of what makes it attractive. But Mexico is also the 15th largest economy in the world. It's our third largest trading partner. It has very significant resources. It has an extraordinary work ethic as well, and work culture. And we see that in the seasonal agricultural workers from Mexico who come and work in our farms during the summer months. So there's an Ottawa sort of, we don't really take Mexico seriously. They're not a reliable partner. And then there's a more general view with Canadians, I think, who don't really see the richness and the complexity of the country.
Mm-hmm. And of course, famously, we heard some Canadian officials express an openness to a U.S. trade deal without Mexico just a few months ago. And here we now have Donald Trump's trade policies hurting this country. It's now affecting the Canadian economy, and more than it's actually hurting the Mexican economy. So as Canada goes to Mexico right now to try to renew this relationship, are we actually at a disadvantage because of where we stand economically and also because of words shared by Canadian officials here?
I don't know. Well, vis-a-vis Mexico, there's no question that there was work to be done to repair the relationship. You can imagine what it was like for me in the twilight of my assignment in Mexico to have comments like Doug Ford's throwing Mexico under the bus and calling for a bilateral arrangement with the U.S. This did not go down well. And that's why this visit by the Prime Minister is so important, because it's a very clear signal that we take Mexico seriously, that we take their views seriously, that we need to understand what their perspectives are, both trilaterally and bilaterally, especially as we look to the renegotiation or the review of the CUSMA, which is going to be a very fraught business, I'd say. So, and it's going to be fraught. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, as you mentioned CUSMA, I do wonder, is this visit, do you think, about trying to create and diversify trade partnerships, increase trade with Mexico, or is this really about strategizing with Mexico how to take on a CUSMA renegotiation next year?
Well, as we say in French, n'en empêche pas l'autre, right? One doesn't, both are possibilities, right? At the very least, it's an attempt to restore some semblance of amity to the relationship after what I think was a pretty catastrophic year last year. And if we can do that, that in itself, I think, would be a major accomplishment. To invite Claudia Sheinbaum to the Kananaska Summit, as the Prime Minister did over the past summer, to personally come to Mexico on a bilateral visit. In fact, we haven't had a bilateral visit just as a bilateral visit from Canada to Mexico in a very long time. So I think it's very savvy and very appropriate of the Prime Minister to be going to Mexico at this point. And who knows what will come out? There's talk of a strategic partnership. I have to say, I've heard that before between Canada and Mexico. And if it only means, well, we're going to agree to meet more frequently bilaterally, well, that will be in itself an important accomplishment. But maybe it means more than that, I think that as we look to the USMCA or CUSMA renegotiation, I think we have to be you know, if it is indeed a three-part or a ménage à trois, it's going to be a very complicated one to manage. We've got to avoid the perspective in Washington that we're ganging up on Washington, but we have to keep the Mexicans close. They have to keep us close to them. We have to understand what their objectives are, and so on and so forth. And then the other point I'd make is, obviously, I think that the next steps in terms of the construction, perhaps I should say the deconstruction, anyway, the construction of North America, I think it's going to be more than a trade policy negotiation. I think there are going to be other things on the table, and it's no secret, of course, that that's what Washington was seeking from us over the past few months. You know, on say on security, on defense, they were looking for some signals and some accommodation. I don't have any secret information about that. I'm simply repeating what I've seen in the media, but it makes sense. It stands to reason that the Americans want more from us than simply for us to, I don't know, put water in our dairy sector, for instance. I'm making a very poor joke there, but anyway, there are other issues there out there, right? So.
Well, you know, as we say, an important trip to be watching here. Renewal, strategizing ahead of CUSMA, a lot on the table. Graeme Clark, thank you for helping put that into perspective.
Pleasure. Anytime.